wondering, if we really enacted the Second Amendment nationwide in the same way that like Georgia or Texas have open carry laws and a lot more lenient licensing and no database tracking, etc. On the whole, couldn't we save a lot of money on the NDA and our national defense by essentially arming our population and giving us, you know, great great gun rights once again?
That's not the argument that I would use against your opponent. The argument that I would use would be one that speaks to his constituents that believe that, think about some of the broader concepts. Focus on the history of how gun rights, specifically the prohibition, has been very racistly applied. And it targets poor people. Everything from bullet taxes to registration fees. I would tackle how it's discrimination against poor people and specifically people of color. That is where his constituents would have their ears perk up. I think you can make other arguments that would make your constituents' ears perk up, but if you get an opportunity to debate him or have his constituents listen, those are the points that I would hit. I would meet them where they're at with and talk to them about something that they care more about, which is discrimination.
Raising the age won't do anything. I mean, you can get a driver's license 17, some states 16. The average vehicle, the average car on the road doing 70 miles an hour is far more dangerous to the general public than guns.
Not to mention most of the kids that use guns get them from their parents anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was that case that set a precedent. I think it was two parents. Last year, school shooting, two parents that were both actually tried separately for involuntary manslaughter.
They were negligent, Moose. Like,
I'm not saying they were. I wouldn't say they were wrongfully. I was all for it. I mean, I wasn't saying I wasn't saying they were wrongly convicted, but that is.
So I guess to say you can't say that law enforcement or courts are not aware of the problem with to your point, parents and guns.
It tickled the hairs on the back of my neck when I found out that they were pursuing the parents, but then when you read the details of the case, it was just like, yeah, they were clearly negligent. You hate to see that start being legislated, but there was just no question about it in that particular case. I think an interesting angle in the gun argument is to talk about how the policies that people are prescribing do not impact criminals; they impact law-abiding citizens. And then, in order to, instead of just shooting down all the laws, actually propose a measure. This is what advocates of the Second Amendment do not do enough of. I think we should be proposing, well, what is the solution? If we think that all of their ideas are bad, what is a good idea? And I think one of the good ideas would be to target laws that specifically target criminals. And one of the areas is with straw purchases. If you could just simply say we should have zero tolerance against straw purchases, because it's definitely hard to prosecute a straw purchase, but if you do prosecute somebody for a straw purchase, I think that's where you want a mandatory minimum of something like 10 years, 20 years, something crazy. Because then what you're doing as a gun advocate is you're proposing a law that's super aggressive towards gun violence, but you're completely leaving law-abiding citizens alone. And that's the thing that some people don't do when they're applying these laws.
Yeah, another thing that I don't think that GA advocates bring up enough either is, comparatively speaking, the number of crimes that are stopped because of lawful abiding gun-carrying citizens. And those numbers are staggering, and you very, very rarely hear those numbers come up when you hear people debating it.
So, what is a liberal Democrat? Is there a difference between a populist, liberal, social democrat? I mean, at what point does it not just become a demonstration of an inversion or a reversal of, status quo in culture? I mean, what is a liberal democrat?
Well, I would say that liberalism advocates for individual rights, and any Democrat that's advocating for collective rights is not a liberal by definition.
I'd like to see you do some spicy topics in the Rational Discussion House, too.
Spicy topics? Like what? What would be a spicy topic?
I mean, of course, there's always the typical, abortion and that type of thing.
Mind scientific. The low-hanging clubhouse fruit.
Yeah, but they're spicy. People come with a passion. And the abortion issue is actually another one of those issues where I really don't think the left and right are that far. They just have generation of people to have especially.
Here's the problem with pro-lifers. I'll pick on them for a second because it's easier. It's easier to pick on the other side because they just want to murder babies. But let's pick on the pro-lifers for a second. They make the argument that it's an innocent life, but then they completely shit on their own argument when confronted with the question of, well, what about rape or incest? And they're afraid to answer it in a way that would be logically consistent.
Because if it's an innocent life form, then it wouldn't matter if it's rape or incest, because your argument is that life is its own separate life, and that the sanctity of life is important and it's worth protecting. And so somebody's discomfiture of carrying that baby, and again, this isn't my position, it's just shooting down the inconsistency of the pro-life argument. If they really believe that life begins at conception and they're dedicated to protecting those lives, then when somebody asks them, what about cases of rape and incest, they would say, doesn't matter. That's the only logical that's the only consistent argument that they can make. And the moment they capitulate on that, you've really got them in checkmate, because they don't actually believe that it's a life being killed.
Of course, it's the hypocrisy of them.
Drones, real humans, but they have no issue with going up abortion clinics and giving people who are abortion curating or offering advice to young women and teenagers or victims of rape and incest. No problem taking their lives.
Well, how does it make? Doesn't logically make sense to kill people who are people. It's just more murder, but they are sanctioned and protected by the law, and it's a big racket. The point is, I think instead of taxpayers funding the racket, they should fund the mothers if they want the money. If you want $10,000 to have a baby versus giving $10,000 to an abortion doctor to murder your child, I say let's give the $10K to the woman so you can choose. I think a lot of these women that go to Planned Parenthood, about $60,000 a month, might opt in for a check versus having their children destroyed in their uterus.
The government is not giving people checks for that shit.
That's what I'm proposing.
It's a bad idea. It has to spend billions more dollars of money than we actually have. Are you campaigning on that joke? Sorry, Marshall.
Yeah, I'm campaigning on that. Cut the $1 billion a month in spending for Planned Parenthood. Stop killing 60,000 babies a month in this country. We have a population decrease happening because of the COVID-19 vaccinations. The mortality rate from COVID-19 vaccinations in 2020 is 20% higher than the average. I'm just saying, let's stop killing our people with big pharma, health insurance, abortionists. Let's let our people live. I'm just saying, let's set our priorities straight. Let's get our priorities in order. Let's get a to-do list going.
Why is it though that whether you talk to somebody on the left or the right, that you can't get them to pin down like what problem are you looking to solve, right? If what we want is to end unwanted pregnancies, if what we wanted to do was, if it's unwanted, then you should stop pointing your semen at an egg. If you truly don't want to have doing behaviors that lead to having kids. But if we wanted to really socially engineer things in a way that would have the outcomes that people say they want, what we would do is just encourage people that aren't married to just be gay, because you're not going to create babies if you're having homosexual sex. And so people will say that that's an absurd argument. Well, what about what I'm attracted to? Well, if the problem that you're trying to solve is you don't want unwanted pregnancies, you don't want abortions, you don't want child out of wedlock, whatever the problem is you're trying to solve, all of that stuff goes away if they're just gay.
Perfect. Makes perfect law.
like there's the problem. Stop. Immediately terminate your attraction and realize the amount of I gotta constantly this is big. I gotta worry about it.
It's just a bell-shaped curve, though. The media and the culture or the government can't influence the homosexual or bisexual, index. But for 30 days, where every business is displaying a rainbow flag, is that new in American culture and society or historical? I'd say it's probably still about on average. The point is, we are spending $1 billion every single, I think is it minute? I can't remember. No, every single hour, basically. 20 billion a day, and there's 24 hours. So we're literally spending at the federal level $1 billion every single hour, and only 600 million of that is collected in taxes, and maybe 400 million is just borrowed. So, when does it ever end? When does the cycle of graft and lobbying and disbursement of funds, when does it ever end? Will it ever end? Or should it ever end? That is the question in a liberal democracy today.
So here's some interesting statistics. So federal government, they borrow 4.7 billion a day. They borrow them, and then they testing of all states. So everybody should not go practice. Get the balance budget, and it works out great. You end up having a large revenue left.
Well, you could look at the international government debts of all governments, Japan, etc., and look at the debt to GDP. And the fact that if we are borrowing this much right now in these other governments, like Spain, for example, owes like 1.2 trillion, 1.6 trillion. It's very high in the European index in terms of GDP and total debt. So if that is the paradigm or the equilibrium or the balance of the global currency system, we are actually in a very good place, knowing how much we're doing currency manipulation. We're getting away with it, and we're accusing everybody else of doing it. That's why Trump is so great.
I think what you mean is because empire.
Yeah, it's empire. When the Indians...
Area where you and I seem to actually get along to
when the British had a major revolution on their hands in India, and they were really worried they were going to lose it, and so guess what they did? They mounted the biggest parade effort in their military, civilizational history, and they mesmerized the Indians. The Indians all lined up and were like, "Wow, look at this parade!" And so they hypnotized all the Indians into basically becoming submissive again, just with that communication, a show of force. So, I'm just wondering if America does show of force politics all the time. So I'm just wondering, when the next show of force will be, because our dollar demands it. I'm
Why
just,
can't we just cancel the debt, John?
I think debt resolution is real because I myself have a very large amount of debt, and I know that I am willing to do a meeting of the minds, but unfortunately, the lender or the banker or the lawyer or the judge on the other end of this equation, we don't seem to have a meeting of the minds. But I think at the civilizational, super empire level, supranational, meeting of the minds with the world's largest nuclear, weaponry. I mean, our aircraft carriers are powered by nuclear power, and they're huge, and they carry nuclear bombs and we have an incredibly well-educated fleet of officers who can exact justice around the world. But I'm just asking, is that really justice? I mean, unless it's a just war, I think you have a lot of veterans who are maybe kind of disgruntled. Like, there's a lot of Afghanistan vets and Iraqi vets who aren't so sure about why they were there. And I'm just asking, if it's not a just war, it doesn't sit well in the stomach.
John, I went to lunch the other day in this little courtyard area, like food trucks and stuff, and they had one random little game set up for adults to play. You know what it was? Axe throwing.
Well, I hate to throw the axe cord around. I'm just being facetious, but if, people want to ask me why I say ask instead of asking me my opinions on certain things like the budget or the deficit or the national debt and the unfunded liabilities. I don't know how many CPAs we have in the house, but
Do you guys know what the math is on the unfunded liabilities?
it's 100 trillion.
Yeah, what I think the carry each American has of the overall debt is like $84,000 per person.
Wrong. Try 110,000, 120,000, or maybe 400 or 600,000 for the unfunded liabilities, because the unfunded liabilities are 4 times that of the funded liabilities. So if everybody owes 110,000 on the funded, everybody owes 440,000 in the unfunded liabilities. Prove to me my math is wrong.
Define unfunded liabilities.
I have asked Grok many times, what is the difference between funded and unfunded liabilities? Guess what Grok's answer is, Dr. Moose? I can't give you the answer. I'd have to ask Grok again exactly how they define it. But the total sum debt is about 150 trillion. So that's the mind-blowing part, is you can toss around 37 trillion all the time, but when you actually bring up the real number of about 150 trillion, it's mind-blowing. So, if you are a libertarian and you think we have too much regulation,
In order for that number to make sense, well, you have to define the fact that you're calculating in unfunded liabilities. If you don't, what is CBLE when you calculate? They don't calculate the unfunded liabilities in that way.
I'm just saying, whatever the numbers on USDebtClock.org say, the unfunded, I think it's 101 trillion, 110 trillion, and the funded is 37 trillion.
And I'm not saying we don't have a bunch of unfunded liabilities. We do. We hinted that if it was described to me as in the neighborhood of about $20 trillion unfunded liabilities for the next 37 years.
See, funded liabilities versus unfunded liabilities sort of implies that, we're not necessarily on the hook for the unfunded because they were never approved for funding. So I think, it's a little bit of a language game here.
What it implies is social welfare program must skew. What I did it had for people that they can actually support with the tax dollars that they get themselves.
Well, these are pension obligations, etc. In Chicago, they have a major pension crisis, but the city of Chicago is about $50 billion in debt. The state of Illinois is about $200 billion in debt. And when you ask Grok, do they have to borrow to pay the pensions, even though they're $50 billion in debt and only bring in about $15 billion a year in budget and $10 billion a year in revenue? So they're absolutely paying the pensions by borrowing and adding to the overall debt. It's a word game.
What's wild is like on a personal level, you don't have the ability to do that. If you have a credit card, you can't use one credit card to pay off the other credit card. They frown upon that. They want you to pay that off, with either your checking account or the debit card, something like that. They don't allow you to pay off one debt with credit. I don't know why the government gets away with it.
It's because it's decentralized and dispersed to every single social security card number bearing American that there is. You are literally in the ledger through the social security number. I mean, it's all one giant network, and you don't feel it, and you really don't feel it because inflation isn't a big problem. It's a problem, but it's not hyperinflation. We're not there yet. We got to get to about 2050 to where we start getting into like absolute hyperinflation, where eggs are $40 or $30, a thing of milk is $30, like that type of a grocery store situation for a lot of people who didn't move up their earnings. I mean, it'll be catastrophic. But what I'm saying is we shouldn't even get there. That's stupid to inflate our money like that and think that we can run the Federal Reserve and Congress like this fiat inflation bubble system. That's stupid economics. That's running a pizza shop at a loss for 25 more fucking years. No, you shut the pizza shop down and you reopen something else.
Yeah, but let's build a new football stadium in your city.
Yeah, you need taxpayer funding to do that, which is fucked up, isn't that? It's always going back to the taxpayer. Let's stop fucking the taxpayer. Let's stop fucking the voter. Let's stop fucking our citizens.
On the existing stadium.
Here's something to consider. So, if you want to find the big culprit with unfunded liability, Medicare. Unfunded liability for Medicare is $50 to $55 trillion. Medicare Part A alone is $15 trillion of unfunded liabilities. Medicare Part B, $20 trillion shortfall. And Medicare Part D, $15 trillion shortfall. I mean, this is has unfunded liabilities larger than the U.S. national debt currently.
Say that like it's a bad thing.
Illinois, all the pension spending.
See, that makes sense, Mojo, that, it is 50 trillion, because if we're already spending 4 trillion on Medicare, Medicaid, and you blow that up by 10x over the next 25 years. See, that's the thing. It's like, over what time frame is that 50 trillion? Like, where do they get that $100 trillion unfunded liabilities number from? It's just a forward projection, but this isn't liberal democracy, and it's not capitalism. What do you call it? Like crony fascism, fiat capitalism?
Economic fascism.
So what? We just elect a new dictator every 4 years, and that's never gonna, that's the game? Is the dictator will never ever go back against economic fascism?
I think eventually it's gonna break. I don't know if if you've ever designed like a video game and there's a variable that you didn't take into consideration, and then you get to a certain point and it does something. Like a virtual pinball machine, and all of a sudden, for a certain angle that the ball might hit, now the ball's stuck and it's not moving. I have a feeling that's what we're going to get to the point of the unintended consequence, which is going to be that the system is just going to break. And then at that point, I think what we do is we tell those foreign entities that we owe money to, as well as corporations, to go pound sand. And then the unfunded liabilities, we just tell the American people, sorry, we're not keeping these promises. And then we just hit a reset button.
And if that's the inevitability, then my question is, why don't we just hurry up and do that?
You know, I couldn't really hear you, Hakima, but Mojo, I think there's like a generational component or a time value of generations, meaning that Chairman Powell, Chairman Trump, like they're more than happy to shake hands and let the status quo be and let bygones be bygones. I think that any kind of, I mean, I've told you this before that there's like a 99.99% chance that the status quo now will be the status quo in the future now, and there will be no actual, deregulation in terms of, I guess, marketplaces. It seems to me like everything is totally bitted up, chopped up, completely organized to the highest extent possible. Therefore, like any kind of actual philosophical economic change most likely won't happen. It's so easy to say that the system is going to pop. But, I follow Peter Schiff, and I've read many of his father's books, Erwin Schiff's books, and Peter is killing two birds with one stone by being a financial advisor and claiming that the Federal Reserve and the U.S. dollar is going to crumble, and that if you invest in his gold stocks and in his gold indexes and use him as your asset manager, you stand the greatest chance of surviving the crash. He's, brilliant in that regards because he plays the contrarian, and a lot of people are contrarians, but the chances are that he's just trying to improve his status in the status quo. So I think that's the actual truth, is you have to play the game to improve your status in the status quo, but the status quo will persist because the system is so bidded and well organized at this point.
Have you guys read Atlas Shrugged, or is that just a title that I throw around to you guys that nobody's taking the time to open? Anybody actually read it?
No, I've never read it.
I would totally recommend this. It's big, maybe, audiobook, 1.5 speed. Stop listening to Clubhouse for a few days. Get on that. But the central point of it is the idea of, if you put the demands on those that produce too greatly to support those that don't produce, there's a limit that they can get pushed to. And we know what labor strikes are, where the workers go on strike. But imagine the innovators, imagine the entrepreneurs, imagine the people that truly produce. If they went on strike and they said, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm not going to play your game, and then they just retreat and they say, I'm not going to fund your society because you're just too wasteful. And if the producers decided to do that, we're fucked. And I think it's a book more people should read. I think it would, especially those that believe that workers should have the right to go on strike. Well, what about the creators, the innovators, the entrepreneurs? Why can't they go on strike?
I think creators and entrepreneurs eventually do get exhausted with the game, but the property taxes are so high that in many ways you can't stop working. And your retirement is at risk with massive pensions and all these unfunded liabilities. And the only way they can get their money seems to be property taxes. So, the solution for long-term financial survival could be being in a place that has no property taxes.
I don't think people are ready for the economic climate. I think if you were to offer people tax reform and a balanced budget, I think they would freak.
Opt for tax increases over that, just because it's the devil that they know.
Hello? You there? Oh, what's 100 times 1,000? Yeah, we should teach you math. I got some engineers.
This is the hagfish. Forget scales, forget bones, even a jaw. Wrinkled and pale, it slithers through the abyss with a single powerful nostril, a super sniffer that detects the faintest whiff of a deceased creature from miles away. But how does this boneless wonder actually eat? Hidden under its chin lies a toothy trapdoor. Once safely inside its feast, the hagfish deploys this weapon, scraping and shredding flesh with its sharp teeth. A powerful tongue that slurps up the resulting mush. But the hagfish has another trick up its slimy sleeve. When threatened, it unleashes a truly remarkable defense mechanism. Slime. Expanded a mind-boggling 10,000 times in water, this slime creates a tangled mess of protein threads that disorients and confuses any attacker. This slimy escape plan is so effective. Predators leave frustrated, leaving the hagfish free to continue its deep-sea scavenging. This.
Did you expect the meat drop to go that hard?
What's the exact disconnect? Like, what's, I mean, what period of time? Are you going 1619 to 2025? From inception, yeah. I'm glad you're now saying
1919 and not saying that black people were indigenous to the United States.
I'm talking about. That's exactly what those numbers show. That they reclassify people into the black population. That's how it grew. That's the only way it can grow to them numbers. If they put other groups of people together that all look the same and make them one group of people, that's the only way the population can grow that fast. The only way.
Let me ask ChatGPT. See what they think. Hold on. We should invite all the ladies to come up. I like when the ladies are up here.
And another thing that's crazy, when you look at the numbers, if you break the Europeans, if you break not just Europeans, you break everybody down by their nationality, it's more black people. We are the third largest group. First is Germans, then it's Mexicans, then it's Black Americans, then it's Irish, then it's English. We have the Irish beat by like 5 million. We have the English beat by 15 million. Somehow them Germans sneaky as fuck because it's 44 million of them. I'm not sure how that happened. I did read into how they was allowed to come, but the Germans was pretty sneaky. But it took about almost 10 million Germans to get to 44 million. At the same time period, it took 388,000 blacks to get to 36 million.
All right, so let me tell you what ChatGPT is telling me. So starting point 1619, the first documented group of Africans arrived in English colonies in Virginia in 1619, around 20 to 30 people. Over the next 200 years, more Africans were brought through the transatlantic slave until it was banned in 1808 in the U.S. and through natural population growth. Let's see. Step 2, The slave trade and early growth. Historians estimate that 388,000 Africans were brought directly to what became the U.S. between 1619 and 1808. By the first census in 1790, there were 757,000 black people, both enslaved and free, roughly 19% of the total population. Growth was mostly natural increases, births minus death, because the slave trade had ended. And then pre-Civil War expansion from 1790 to 1860. In 1790, 757,000 black Americans. In 1860, 4.4 million black Americans. This huge jump was from high birth rates and relative stable survival rates, even under slavery. The enslaved population had a higher birth rate than death rate, which is unusual in most of the Caribbean and South America where conditions were deadlier. Post-Civil War growth from 1865 to 1900. Emancipation freed 4 million people. By 1900, 8.8 million black Americans. This doubling over 40 years fits a natural growth rate of 1.7 per year. 20th century growth. 1900, we had 8.8 million. By 1950, we're up to 15 million. Industrialization, better health care, migration to cities. By 2000, there was 36 million. Medical advances, lower infant mortality, longer life expectancy, continued high fertility into the mid-20th century. And today, the census of 2020 had 41 million people identifying as black alone, 46 million if you include identifying as black in combination with another race. That's an average growth rate of roughly 2.1 per year over 230 years, with most of it coming from natural increase rather than immigration. Post-slave trade immigration from Africa and Caribbean is a much more recent, smaller factor. So the simple math is, it went from 388,000 to 41 million at a growth rate of 2.1.
Okay, now ask, why did the black Americans outpace white Americans by such a large margin? Like, why, like, how is it possible that black Americans grew 100 times and they only grew 5 times? Like, how that, tell me, break that down.
Let's see. I'll ask. These are good questions. It actually says no. The black population in the U.S. has never outpaced white Americans in terms of total numbers or growth rate over a long run. Here's why. Starting numbers were vastly different. In 1790, the first census, where there was 3.17 million white Americans versus 757,000 black Americans. Whites already outnumbered blacks 4-1. Both groups grew mainly by natural increase. What's the number? I'm looking for the actual percentage. What's the actual percentage? Doesn't tell me. I'm going to ask it again. What was the growth rate per year by race? Okay, let's see. Okay, so the white population growth rate started in 1790. We had 3.17, and then by 1860 was up to 27 million. They went from 3 to 27 in the same period of time, where blacks went from 750,000 to 4.4 million.
A lot of that is immigration, though.
But we're talking about population growth. So,
you just said birth rate, though, so you can't put birth rate with immigration also.
No, I said I typed in growth rate. So the growth rate.
I thought you said birth rate.
So in 1790, there was 3.17 million white people and 757,000 black people. And if you look at these birth rates, Let's see, what's the total? Total.
In the future, I did not want to ask to provide control positions and expected for
Okay, so if you break it down by era, from 1790 to 1860, whites had a faster birth rate. They were, growth rate, 2.9% per year, where blacks were at 2.6. So it was 0.3% higher for whites. And then in 1860 to 1900, whites grew at a rate of 2.8%, where blacks grew at 1.9. From 1900 to 1950, whites 1.7 to blacks 1.2. The only period of time that we have is from 1950 and beyond, where whites grew at 0.7% from 1950 to 2000, and blacks grew at 1.9%. And then from 2000 to 2020, whites grew at 0.25% and blacks at 0.6%. So you have to get to 1950 for the black growth rate to have surpassed percentage-wise that of whites.
But I'm not going to dispute none of that. But at the end of the day, there's something missing. The math still isn't the math. If the whites started with more, grew faster, how did the blacks go 100x and whites go 4 to 5x? Like literally, they went from the 3 million. With immigration, by 1860, 27 million with immigration and all that.
Well, let's do the math.
It's 194 million whites, 36 million blacks. So you could start, if you go from the starting point, blacks went at 100x and whites didn't at all. So how is it?
Well, the 100x doesn't follow. So you have you went from 757 million or 757,000. I'm sorry, 757,000 from in 1790 to.
Okay. That's 50x. I would count it 388. So the 750, that's 50x still 50x compared to 5x.
So if you go 757,000 to 41.1 million. Versus white people growing from 3.17 to 204. I mean, it's interesting. What is the point you're trying to make?
The number of blacks grew so much because they mixed a lot of different people, a lot of indigenous people, a lot of Moorish people. They put all into one group and called them Negroes. It was a paper genocide where they didn't kill everybody like they said. They reclassified them into another group. And if I want to drive, and I can put up a lot of things that let me know like when they did what. The history is there. Like they definitely reclassified Moors and indigenous people with black Negroes, put them all in one group.
Well, if you want to start in 1619 and you're starting with the number of 25, it's interesting, but that doesn't account for the 388,000 that came later, and but so the total number from 1619 to 2025, the total number, the rate of growth for black is 2.24%, and for whites it's 2.57. So whites have grown faster.
Not really. I mean, come on, we got to be. 388,000 blacks got brought over here. Not counting the Caribbeans, like they say it's 36 million, but they say 41 and 44. They start counting Caribbeans, but they say the foundation of Black Americans, 36 million, started at 388,000 with zero immigration. Whites started at 3 million with immigration. They altogether, so their total number that got brought here and immigrated is 33 million people. That is their number, 33 million people within the 1800s. That's how many whites there were. And at that time, it wasn't even a million blacks at that time. And that number, their number went from 33 million up to 194 million. That's what 5x, maybe 6, going 5.5x. The blacks went from 380, would you say 750?
Akima, I want to agree with you on something here. Your math is not mathing.
I don't see how not. It's very clear.
Akima, what did you think of the Liberia movement?
To me, past tense, I think it was stupid.
I mean, just the idea, the whole back to Africa thing. Like, you think it's a good idea, bad idea?
Can't send somebody back somewhere where they never came from, so that's a bad idea.
Well, now that's fascinating. What do you mean they never came there from there?
They didn't. I say 388,000 did, but the vast majority got mixed into that 388,000. So now the vast majority didn't come from that.
Oh, yeah.
How you doing, Roger?
Well, I'm doing math on Clubhouse, so it's not the best night. But how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. First day back in my actual office in 6 days, so that was very interesting. It was actually a really good day. Really, really, really good day. So I'm going to go to the gym, and now I'm sitting here listening to you guys talk about race. So it must just be another day on Clubhouse.
What was your theory yesterday that it starts in the morning?
Talks about Trump, and then in the evening it talks about race. Is that the progression?
Yeah, for some houses, that's how the progression goes. That's the flow of how the conversations tend to evolve on this app. Others, they start at the bottom of the ladder, they work their way up. Some start in the middle, they skip around to many different topics, but it pretty much follows the same logic pattern and the inability to deviate away from those topics on a daily.
Mojo, I'm wondering if, I'm sure you don't need the money, but I'm wondering if somehow I could convince you to do a organized book room, maybe at least for an hour this upcoming week, where everybody reads from a book for 5 minutes, and hopefully we'll get 20, we'll get an hour's worth of readers. Do you think it would be possible if you would join my room where you created a 1-hour book club room?
What book are we going to read?
Everybody gets to pick their own book, but everybody gets to do
their own book.
Yeah, whatever book you want.
That's not going to work.
Public by Edward J. Watts.
That's not going to work, because let me tell you exactly what's going to happen.
It will work.
You're going to have one person that's going to pick a book by a Zionist. You're going to have another one that picks a book by Palestinians. Then they're going to argue about who wrote what correctly. Then after that, you're going to have one person that's going to quote Strom Thurmond. You're going to have another person who's going to quote Jesse Jackson. Then they're going to start fighting about race. So I'm telling you, until the usual actors that introduce these topics and deviate the topics away from what we are actually talking about, when we do open up different discussions, until they're held accountable, I don't think that it's possible to even hold a book reading club.
It is possible.
Without this being an issue.
You
No,
just
I don't
need
think
one
it is.
mod.
I don't think it is.
If somebody doesn't want to comply and just do 5 minutes of reading, they'll be kicked to the goo. And the super mod will demand that if you want to participate in the room, you have to read for 5 minutes. But you need a star to draw the crowd, to draw the audience, and to get people to obey the rules of the room, which would be 5 minutes of reading what's called from a book. I'm just merely trying to demonstrate that out of the countless many number of hours that you will spend on this app, if the supermod could demand 5 minutes of reading, it would be a very beneficial and new type of experience for most people who are usually just engaged in conversation. I'm telling you that it would be possible to have a book club on here and to force it, but most people want the short-term dopamine from having, contentious conversations.
Yeah, it's going to turn into a Chomsky Palestinian petting zoo. Give it a week.
Why don't you host one then, John?
I do. I have been doing book club. I have book club houses across multiple profiles, and nobody comes to my rooms, but I'm still doing my own book club.
Across Clubhouse?
Yeah, across 3 different clubhouse profiles.
John, have you ever been part of a book club before?
I have, and it was terrible.
Well, typically what you do is you select a book that everybody reads from, and then if you want to do a book reading from the book club, then we could gather everybody, and then we could take turns every 5 minutes reading from the same book.
I know. But I'm saying because everybody wants to talk, I think a 5-minute book club is the way to go.
What if we pick short books? What if we picked a pamphlet like Common Sense by Thomas Paine, and we got everybody to read Common Sense, and we read it out loud?
You could do that. Yeah, you could do that. You could pin the link and have everybody read from it, like as if you were at some kind of Bible study and everybody takes a turn.
We did a room years ago. Some of you might have been there for it, where we were reading the Bill of Rights, and we read them and we talked about them, and it was a big room, and people were really surprised at the amendments. They didn't know that. We didn't just go through the 10. We went through every single amendment. Room went for hours, and you could probably imagine like the ones we got hung up on, like the states' rights stuff was a thing. Free speech was a thing. Some went really quickly because nobody had a well-informed opinion. But I think you could do this if you just have to get everybody to go and commit to doing the homework, and then those that don't do the homework, if they showed up to the room, they would just hear people reading that did do the homework.
No, I don't think homework assignments are going to work. It needs to be on-the-spot action where people literally click the link in the title and then you read the document for 5 minutes each. Everybody has to read. If you don't read, you're not allowed on stage. If you don't read and you're on stage, you get kicked to the goo. I'm just saying the book club is about maximizing intelligent communication transfer.
All right, let's ask. Hakima, do you want to participate in the book club?
It sounds like basically John just want to hear some shit that makes sense opposed to this mindless jargon. So, but I'll try it out. I'm not for it or against it, but I'll definitely try it out.
Can we start with the book of Revelations?
No.
Yeehaw!
I don't want to start with the world is ending.
I feel like, I don't think you read it right. The good guys win.
But the world ends. The good guys win, and the world ends, and we live happily ever after.
Well, saying the world ends doesn't sound like happily ever after.
No. The world ends, and you get to go be with God. That's the happy part, right? You're not separated from Him.
So don't you think the framing of the world comes to an end is the wrong framing?
No,
I'm trying to feed dogs food.
We've got Dude here, and Marshall just was describing what's called duality versus non-duality. I'm wondering if the Dude could enlighten us.
While Dude is getting his thoughts together, I did want to point out how actually significant it was that Mojo kind of turned this into a book club right now. On the spot.
Yin yang.
Well,
Yin yang duality, but the different parts of it are dual. The whole of the yin yang is non-dual. Dichotomy is dual.
Do you think we'll get more people involved if we read books that were written by women or people of color?
Oh, here we go. You're doing it again, Roger. You're doing it again.
See, that's why I say in a liberal democracy versus, let's say, a fascistic government which demands one book or a couple books, that's why I say let people have the freedom of choice in book club to get their 3 to 5 minutes out that they want to read. I love reading poetry, love it. It's ecstatic. And it's so much better than having endless conversations and heated debates.
So, Roger, a topic like affordable housing, for example, if you opened up a room to talk about building restrictive codes and how that could potentially violate people's constitutional rights, I guarantee you within the first 30 minutes, you're going to talk about how, the building codes are racist, and then you're going to have a bunch of people that are going to fly into the room and then start accusing Jews of perpetuating some oppression on people's building rights. I'm telling you, it all goes back to a couple of central topics that people can't help but itch themselves out of. It's just, I mean, we've seen this before.
It sounds like you just brought these topics.
Well, these are political topics, I think, at the end of the day. They don't liberate you. They don't transcend you. There's no information or education there. It's just politics.
But they're no longer political topics. They're talking about political subject, but the topic matter of opening up those spaces in the context of this and the culture of this app is to basically cast aspersions on people's character. Nobody wants to actually argue about the politics at hand. That's the issue.
No, what I'm saying is that is their politic. I mean, that's how they do it. I mean, I think all communication is political. So even when you start talking about the debt and the deficit, to me, that's still political rhetoric, propaganda in a way, because the truth is what Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, which is you do not have to fear fear. The only thing you have to fear is fear itself. So if you fear money or you fear the debt, well, I don't think you understand the games of kind of enforcement. We've got the guns. We've got the aircraft carriers and the tanks and the bombers. It's up to us to lose the war. And I'm not saying we're in a war. I'm just saying that our dollar is backed. And a lot of other countries' currencies aren't backed by force.
Evan, everything in this country is not political, okay? People put out a freaking Gene ad, okay, and thought that was political. That wasn't political. People's responses are political. The way they choose to respond, the beliefs behind their responses are political. But people's actions aren't inherently political. I think that we need to delineate what's political and what's just...
Well, I just find it as a communication. Not action, but communication. It's the word, the transmission of words into our brains versus going in the streets and getting into a fight with a police officer or something to that extent. I think the non-action is more important than the action, because if you're breaking the law and you're an anarchist versus somebody on a social audio chat app trying to increase your education and intelligence, or if you're just going to spew politics all day long, it's your opportunity cost. But the teacher or the educator hopefully tries to wake people up and say, hey, now is all important. Stop thinking and end your problems.
Anybody see any of the horsemen lately?
The horsemen?
Yep, there's 4 horsemen at the end of the end of the world. Revelations.
Well, what's the magic word? Anyone here know what the super secret 4-letter magic word is?
Love.
I mean, I think you could say LOVE is actually maybe more important than the GOD, but that's like 3 versus 4. But I'm just trying to say that, you can turn any word into a mantra. Love is a great mantra, but it also implies hate or disgust or anger. What's the opposite of love? So, if you've ever been in a loving relationship and then and how it morphed or turned into an absolute contrarian position, you wonder, how could that be?
So why do people always speak about these type of topics as though there's either one or the other? Like, have you ever heard of indifference?
Indifference?
Right. So what does indifference mean?
It means agnosticism, which means you don't have a definitive position. You're not all or nothing. You're not going to die on a hill for your position. That's what a lot of people on this app do. And it's road raging, really.
Right, and that's my whole point. I feel like people don't exploit the existence of indifference enough. You know, there's some shit on this app that, you know, yeah, many of my Republican counterparts care about. And a lot of those things I don't really give a shit about. Doesn't affect me, don't care. You know, that's between you, God, and whoever it is that you're doing it with. I don't care. But people don't allow people to be indifferent. You either have to be on one side or you have to be on the other. You can't just remain indifferent. And when you remain indifferent, you have people on both sides casting aspersions on your character, trying to create you in the identity of the opposite side of their beliefs in a way that is disingenuous from your position as being indifferent.
Well, that's the condition of mind.
Indifferent about the way they feel like.
Well, like, you could be attentive and aware without having made a choice in that dichotomy that you set forth, right? You don't have to be ignorant or indifferent. You could be attentive and aware and not in a dual mindset all the time. It'd be in a non-dual mindset, but aware and attentive.
Okay, so let's look at the history of this app and let's look at different topics where people were not allowed to be indifferent. COVID. Can we start there? Can you guys resonate with my opinion on where the history of this app has disallowed people from being able to experience this app in the same way that everybody else is, you know, able to experience? Is if, you know, you have to take some sort of side. I mean, why are we not uplifting people who are just indifferent? I feel like that's where the real conversation takes place.
Well, with regards to COVID, medical misinformation will not be tolerated by the medical industrial complex and the censorship platforms. And they proved that. They eliminated 30 of my accounts. They deleted tens of thousands of people who spoke out against mass injections.
But they're not done with it yet. The other day, we changed the title to what was worse, the vaccinations or the disease, and that was the only room within the last week that got shadow banned. So, like, just putting those words in the title in 2025 is a problem.
Yeah, on YouTube, they have a medical misinformation policy. You can't talk about. There are verboten topics that you can't talk about because you don't agree with the health outcomes of what Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, and 10 other big pharma distributors and doctors tell you is good for your health. I asked Grok today, what are the 10 health benefits of getting the COVID-19 vaccines? It's really interesting. And then I asked, give me the contrarian position to all the bullet points you just gave me. And sure enough, Grok will give alternative positions, but the first response is always the consensus, never the contrarian position. So I asked Grok, for all future questions, also give me the contrarian alternative position to whatever your answer is, and please save that setting. So hopefully my AI chatbot, Grok, will always remember my preferred settings. Can anyone here tell me what the health benefits were of getting, or are the benefits of getting the COVID-19 vaccine? Anyone here feel like there's any real health benefits?
Yes, a bunch of liberals will stop nagging the shit out of you and you'll have a little bit of the peace. I'm sure that would make your blood pressure go down.
I mean, how do you weigh the health benefits of a COVID-19 vaccine versus having like a chopped chicken salad and going to the gym that day?
everybody's going to do better than the chicken, right?
So what? Anyone here know what a solipsist is? Solipsism? Anyone know what solipsism is? Or solipsists? Well, I've heard it said that a solipsist believes that nothing really exists outside of his mind. And so Alan Watts, he was joking, he said it'd be kind of funny to go to a conference for solipsists and just meet people who think everything is like a construct and their brain is like the central constructor of their reality, and their reality is like the ultimate reality. So it kind of puts everybody right back in the now, because in kind of in a way we are all experiencing reality through our own little tunnel vision, and this app is technically a solipsistic app. Everybody here has their all or nothing position. That's why I say, like, is a future communication, event horizon on the bill? Is it in the future? Like, is there going to be, like, because when you look at all this technology, in a way, it's just like fascination spam. How can we, create a new moth to a flame with a moth? Like, there's no real innovation happening. Like, IQ is going down. The endless doom scrolling. There's just zombies out there, not moving, looking at their cell phones, consuming, videos and pictures, and being stimulated by it. But how do we enhance education with future generations in a way that has never been done before? Because if we can't generate more revenue and create, new industries or breakthrough technologies, we're just a bunch of consumer drone slaves. And there will be no way to get out of this fiat hyperinflation bubble that we have created. We could ask Caleb down there, what does the Torah say about economic development? Because I don't think relying on a debt jubilee to essentially consolidate or have a new meeting of the minds with regards to the accounting, the numbers, the responsibilities, I don't think that's